This is this is part two about the one that I just did a while back. These obviously take time to load up onto my channel, where the last title was corporate military psyop operations, and I've mentioned because there's just so much information, it's so vast, you can't compress it down into one video. When you're a monopole, on a multi-dimensional, multi-density level, 15D, just start with that. Even though you know that when you're the one, you're giving love to all creation. So there are no boundaries, per se, right? But I cut off where I said IBM Watson, which is IBM Marduk, okay, a Draco Prince, okay? And so if you start from that period when I became aware of it, and we were aware of it because I was aware of the Beast technology system, Beast system, okay? Because remember, as I said before, it's all about control. That's why they want to sell you everything in order to get energy from you. So they use that energy in order to run their systems, to pay their people to do what their puppets do. It's essentially what it is. See, their puppets require a paycheck because they represent a battery that's going to work for them. So they got to have a source of energy, which are numbers, in which to pay them in energy. So where do you think they get it from? You're looking at them. Okay? All of us that represent the law of one. Because you're experiencing an eternal love vibration through your own heart. So when I'm a monopole, it means that I'm connected to the source from which it all comes. And since I've chosen to serve forever, being with the flower side, okay, means that I'm one and the same. There isn't any difference between what she is, what I am, we're one. The flower gardens of Eden, okay? And so that's a simple translation as a small child, okay? Wanting to go down, and I've shared this before, but here's just another typical example. When I'm looking at all the stuff that gets sold in stores, I chose to want to make my own clothing represented by what I'm going to symbolize with me, which are my colors. Okay, so I went down to a fabric store and picked out a pattern that was pink with round green polka dots, emerald and pink. So I wore that color in junior high school. I was 7th grade at Columbus Tustin Junior High School in Tustin, California. Back in, when was that? 64, something like that, 63? I don't remember the date. I just remember the picture wearing that and sewing that and having my mother show me how to use her sewing machine to put it together. That's called wearing your colors. So you realize what flags mean. So go take a look at the City of London flag. That's a white flag of peace with a red cross on it. So go take a look at all your Knight Templars, right? Go look at I did a video on the Maltese cross, or if you will, the Pour le Mérite, how they're all associated with each other. They're knights, right? Knights, right? And that whole history, the Vatican assassins during the Queen Elizabeth days with Mary, Queen of Scots, all that. Monarchs, a monarch, a single arc. So anyway, it's just you know what an antenna war is, which is a communication war, which is a lines of communication, because your operating system is operating on codes, which represent instruction sets, because you're an antenna, a supercomputer terminal antenna. So when you anchor and ground it to the planet, you've essentially grounded your antenna, right? So now they put their antennas up. So we were aware they're going to start putting their antennas up at a very fast rate of speed because they knew we were coming back. So that means they're going to be wanting to run what we call interference, because anybody that's worked in U.S. military operations, even at the most basic level of a walkie-talkie, okay, or running what's more known as signal, in more modern times, because more people probably familiar who worked in the military. Sparks in the Navy, they call it sparks. They used to wear a spark like a lightning bolt on their, okay, with a headset on, okay, running a radio station, whether it's shortwave or ham radio, their entire radio communications, right? I'll say, and then you can just scale all that up to all their Navy and everything else that they do, which is all about avionics, which is all about communication, which is all about antennas, because that's what DNA is. Right? Radio star antennas. Right? Spirit in the radio. So these are antenna wars, is what they are. That's why I was very aware. It's not a coincidence that my head is inside the cab of a fire truck in 1970, wanting to find out what they're doing. Do you think it's a coincidence that my head was there with another Sparks, another networker, changing out the communication system in a statewide network, putting up microwave repeaters all the way up through California? You think that was a coincidence? No, I was right there at that moment to experience exactly why they were putting those up. So they're going to microwave everybody. So it wasn't like when they had the Air Resources Board that was holding hearings, because the doctors were already providing the information on what these microwave towers were going to do to everybody. So if they cared about the population, which would be everybody that they say that they serve, which they don't, because they're parasites, they're parasitic puppets working for the Wizard of Oz behind the machine, okay, the corporate military machine, okay, then they're just hired hands. They're just hired help. That's all they are. They simply do a job. They're what we call the expendables, low-level operators, okay? That's all they are. They're just carrying out their marching orders. That's all they represent, okay? Because they're a hierarchical system, which is everything about stars and bars. That's the American flag. That's not a peace flag. That's a war flag, okay? So they're at war with us. They're at war against the branch of mankind, okay? So, you know, it's in all our movies. Avatar, right? Cyber Wars, all the rest of that. Body Snatchers. Remember the old movie in the 50s? Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Okay? Patty put up all the maps that showed the grid changes that had taken place on the planet in order to support what we are instead of what we are. Right? So when you're in antenna wars, we're talking about lines of communication, which are lines of communication between DNA strands, which are codes. So the whole idea is to prevent the codes from being experienced in the software in order to repair the software. So that's why they set up all their antennas to prevent that from happening. So that would be the same between where we are above as below, and why they put all these antennas up, so that you couldn't get the communications. Right? That would be the same thing as jamming in the old days. Right? Or when in Vietnam, when they were sending chaff out. When a Soviet MiG or whatever was going to send off a missile, run chaff. What is that? Aluminum. Right? So they can't pick up the signal and home in, called a homing signal. Just like the way that subs use sonar. Ping it back, baby. Where's that target? Phase in, phase out. Phase in, phase out. That's your cloaking technology, right? They don't have what we have. Okay? So this is where we had to break through their lines of communication. So we know how to fry all their communications. Okay? But we don't want to burn everybody up. So we had to do this in such a way through beings that have connections, and I'm one of those on the ground that can do that because of who I'm connected to. That's why Irina Goia said, brother, you got codes. That's right, I do. So now the communications is opening up here between different units of consciousness or different operating systems that are now passing the codes. Right? Hey, pass the bread, pass the sugar, pass the salt, right? So those are called code transfers. So what that does is open up more antennas that are breaking through, that are trying to run interference. So they knew they were in a race against time to break down those codes so they can't be transmitted and experienced in your operating system with your antenna and our antennas, communicating down to everyone here. See? So that people know what's really going on. An information war is really an antenna war, because that's lines of communication of what you experience through the communication. And how do you know that what you're experiencing with your antenna is the truth? Or if your soul is intact and you have a spirit that is in that light, which is what love is, you know the communication, where it came from. Okay? So these are communication wars because the universe, all creation, is a communication system. How else are we going to communicate if we can't get the communication? We're now aware of what you are. Right? A receptor, a receiver. You need to have a receiver, right? And if you don't have a transmitter, you can't communicate back. Neurons. So the heart is the power center for the most neuron production, generating a gazillion neurons. Right? And what is the activity that produces and generates the most neurons? Making love to somebody you're in love with, because you're experiencing the love in you, you're giving to her, and the love that she's experiencing in her, she's sharing with you. Wow, that's a powerful star between a male and a female that decided they never wanted to be separated from each other. Then imagine how much power is being generated from the two of them that became one. Wow. Yeah. That's a hell of a beacon, isn't it?